Hello, everybody. My name is Jimmy, and welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel. Thank you for stopping by. So this is all about wine, of course. If you are interested in it, you want to learn more, please do keep watching these videos. But it's really designed for those of you studying the world of wine to get the most from your studies so you can understand, of course, and pass your examinations. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please do put it in the comments section below this video. Maybe you have visited Germany. Maybe you enjoy the wines. Maybe you have some experience around Spätburgunder. Please do get in touch. Okay, well, let's rock and roll. Let's start to look at the world of Germany. So Germany is split into three series. This is series one, looking at the introduction to Germany. And we are going towards the business end now of this session, of this series. We are looking at the key grape variety of Spätburgunder. So we are looking really at two key grape varieties in Germany. Riesling was on the previous video, the kind of queen of Germany, the most noble of the white grape varieties. And now we're on Spätburgunder, which of course is more French in its origin, but has been planted in Germany for around, in fact, over a millennia. So very important in this part of the world. So we'll go through everything around Spätburgunder, linking it to other interesting facts from places in the world. We will follow on with part 6 and 7 after this. They're only going to be available to my subscribers of my e-learning portal. You'll see the address at the bottom of the slide. Okay, let's rock and roll, talking about all things German red varieties to begin with, leading into Spätburgunder, of course. And here is some of the latest figures, well, the 2020 figures for the grape varieties that are grown in Germany. And it's really important to immediately note the rise of red wine production in Germany. Around a third of plantations, you'll see this number down here. Hopefully I've got my pointer out. Yes, down here. So that's the total number of red wine production as a percentage. So nearly a third. And if you do go back to 1970, and in fact pretty much standard across to about 1990, you'll see that it's only somewhere around sort of, let's say 15% on average. So significantly increased over the last 20, 30 years or so. So let's talk about the stylistic changes of red wines as well. Much of Germany's red wine used to be very simple, light and fruity, often with some residual sugar to curb things like underripeness and high acidities. Very typical, actually, across a lot of continental Europe to do that. You'll know that from northern Italian red wines in the past as well. So we have moved style, though. Doesn't just make simple fresh reds. There is much better quality being made across the board due to the things like better clonal selection of the grape varieties, specifically Spätburgunder, Pinot Noir, and Dornfelder. There's better vineyard management and winemaking techniques, as well as increasing temperatures through the likes of global climate change. So you'll find that the vineyards are a bit warmer. So Spätburgunder, you'll see here, it's top of the list for red wine production, with 2020 around 11.3% of the total. So another one that has increased from, say, 1990 from around 5% up to its number today. It really has enjoyed a rapid rise in popularity, both domestically and on the export market. So we are now recognizing, thankfully, Germany as a high quality country for producing exceptionally well-made Spätburgunder, complex, often with density, intensity, balance, poise, oak integration, all of these kind of things. So let's talk about Spätburgunder. Now, first of all, Spätburgunder is Pinot Noir. Okay, it's just the German way of saying it. Spät means late, Burgunder means Burgundy, late Burgundy. As when it was planted here, it was one of the later varieties to ripen. So we know that plantings have almost trebled, and it particularly thrives in some of the warmer parts of Germany. Now, Germany is known as a cool continental climate, but when you head south down towards the Alsatian border towards Switzerland, that kind of area, specifically Baden, is one of those areas that really emerged. And there are others that are in cooler zones as well, but here is the Kaiserstuhl in Baden, the king's chair or the king's throne, which is a very well-known hill which overlooks the Rhine. It's a very special part of the world. So famous place sort of for emergence of Spätburgunder. Further in the vineyard, now Spätburgunder, aka Pinot Noir, prefers cool to moderate climates, as we are aware, and it's a variety which is early budding and early ripening. So the previous point there, early budding is an issue in such a cool continental climate, hence why it's actually preferred in the warmest sections of Germany for the most part. Why? Well, of course, in these cool continental climates, we're going to get an increased risk of spring frost, and early budding varieties like Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, and so on will suffer with spring frost, which will dramatically reduce the yield. So in the past, it hasn't been a grape variety been focused on, but with raising warming temperatures plus better vineyard management, we are working around that. And that's, of course, why we've seen a rise in popularity of this variety. The latter point was that it was early ripening, which is a benefit in the cool parts of Germany, of course, southwest Germany. Clonals, and we've mentioned this a little bit already. Now, lots of varieties in the world will have different clonal productions. Now, what does that mean? Well, clones. So we have a type of grape variety like Pinot Noir. A clone is the same genetic stamp as Pinot Noir, but a different variation of it. So genetically it is the same, but it is grown up in different areas, cultivated in different parts of the world, different parts of a region, and it has subtle differences, sometimes quite significant differences, about the way the vine acts, how it takes up water, its root systems, thickness of skin, size of berries, the amount of pips, you name it. It makes it quite complex. Now, the older varieties in the world, which we know have a lot of history behind them, a long legacy, those varieties have the ample opportunity to have lots of different clones, right? So if you compare it to varieties which are minor in the world today, so here in the UK, Bacchus is quite a famous variety now. It's really doing well in the UK, but there really isn't much genetic diversity of clonal diversity of Bacchus. But Pinot Noir, on the other hand, which has had thousands of years of history, has lots of different clones. A few of them are just listed up there. So the world's best red wines are generally reputed from a mixture of suitable clones. Now, in Burgundy, you've got lots of different numbers. There's nothing sexy about the naming of clones generally, specifically from France. They're just numbers. So you'll see that we've got 23, 777, 115, 114. Basically, the kind of higher the number, the later the clone that comes out of Burgundy, typically. 777 and 828, which are very favoured red wine clones for Pinot Noir. They are ones that came out, I think, in the 1980s. But we've had one released in the early 2000s, which is 1066, so a little bit higher number even still. And typically things like 777 and 828 are quite highly favoured in comparison to the likes of 114 and 115. Germany has quite a few various clones. They have the Dijon clones, which we will call them the French clones, things like 105, for example. They also have 52-86. They have some that are actually named as well, like Classic, Charisma, Vision, 20GM, and they also have groups from Geisenheim and Freiburg as well. So there is diversity here because Pinot Noir has been grown in Germany for quite some time. So that means more complexities for us, of course, for the wines. So vineyard management is also constantly improving, with producers using those various different clones, perfecting canopy management, and also then, of course, selecting harvesting dates to balance alcohol, acidity, and the ripeness of both the fruit and the tannin. So moving Pinot Noir away from just being a light, fruity, slightly residual sugar style to something which can be really rather serious. Bearing in mind that Germany is the third largest producer of Pinot Noir in the world, behind France and the United States of America. So there is significant production, there is high quality, and you definitely can rub shoulders with some of the highest quality Pinots in the world, with some of the best Spätburgunders, the Grosser Gewach, for example, which we'll look at later. What happens? So we have things like cold soaking, which is more commonplace. Remember, German winemaking is something which is very modernized. They were really pioneering after the Second World War in introducing modern techniques. So cold soaking, a modern technique, known as also as cold maceration or a pre-fermentation maceration, is a technique where grapes, before fermentation, they are crushed or partially crushed, and then they are stored in cold condition, which is below the temperature needed to start the fermentation. Some winemakers believe this is a very valuable way of extracting color and also fruit purity. So people do this in order to really bring out the gentle soul of Pinot Noir. Typically, sulfur will be added at this point to protect the must that is coming out. And it's typically chilled to somewhere like 4 to 10 degrees Celsius to reduce the rate of oxidation, also reduce the threat of spoilage from different bacteria and organisms, and also to inhibit the start of a spontaneous fermentation. They can use dry ice as well to further protect it on top. That's to minimize oxidation as well. This timing of cold soaking can be often anywhere up to 10 days. And they might even maximize the contact by doing a bit of sort of mixing as well to promote that extraction as well. So it's a gentle technique. It's labor intensive. You need the space and storage. So it definitely increases cost, but it is a way that it's a process that some of the great producers in the world do. And that certainly is what happens in Germany as well. Further in the winery, some producers will use the process of whole bunch fermentations or whole berry as well. Now, the tannins from stems can contribute tannin to the wine without needing the use of oak, for example. So it's a way of potentially adding a bit more structure. And it really is quite important that the stems have some ripeness to them so that they are not purely freshly green. They have lignified a little bit, gone a little bit brown, or have gone fully brown. And that is in order to extract a nice tannin, a positive tannin instead of an astringent style tannin. Stems can also add flavors. Sometimes people describe spicy or herbal as well. That's a possibility. The other thing to note is that through this process where, I mean, if you want much more information, by the way, please do look at my videos on this. I go into big detail about whole bunch fermentations in the D1 section of the diploma. Plus, there are others out there on my channel. But just quickly, what you will do with whole bunches, of course, whole bunches of grapes come in with stems. They are then put into a vat. It might be partial juice, so some of it's crushed, some of it isn't, with whole bunches. That's typical. And what will happen is the berries that haven't been crushed, the whole berries still that are on stems, maybe let's just say it's 50-50. 50% has been crushed, 50% hasn't. The 50% that hasn't, that goes into that vat, that's mixed in, will then undergo a semi-carbonic maceration because it is surrounded by juice, fermenting juice. It doesn't have access to oxygen. So it goes through a semi-carbonic, which promotes real brightness in the wine, very, very pure characteristics, which is a common technique in places like Burgundy and increasingly so here as well in Germany. And then further sort of finishing techniques. In general, producers here in Germany are tending to use less new oak, and some are using, of course, larger formats, larger barrels than 10 to 20 years ago. Things like Foudre, or the German equivalent name, and the large formats, 1,000 litre, 800, 600 sort of litre sized barrels. And this, of course, is to reduce the rate of impact that barrel can have on that wine. So it's more about balance. Yes, they're going to still use barriques from France. Yes, they're still going to use new oak, but in fact, it's a less common thing. We are looking at much more older oak and larger formats today. And also oak from German forests, as well as nearby, things like Hungarian, Austrian, for example, Stockinger casks are being used more frequently as well. The style. So the traditional style of a German Spätburgunder is lighter in color, light in body, and also in tannin, and also in acidity than its counterparts from warmer places. I would say the acidity is always quite bright, but the tannin, the body, and the color traditionally have always been a bit lighter. I can remember when I first got into wine, German Pinot Noir Spätburgunders were often very delicate in style, but there's been a huge movement away from that. Many contemporary winemakers today are producing wines that are in a more modern expression, a more international style with a fuller body, deeper color, but not deep, but deeper. And then with more structure through oak, structure through whole bunching, right? So you're going to get much more complexities behind those wines, which will suit the body of the wine. So depth, complexity, and also you might get a little bit of oak characteristic as well. Now, Meyer-Neckel, which is this bottle on the right-hand side, this is one of their Grosser Gewach Pinot Noirs from Vineyard, and it's from the Ahr area, AHR, north of the Mosel. It's actually quite a cool place, and you wouldn't necessarily think that it should produce such complex wines, but it does. Lots of factors. All the things I just mentioned about winemaking, but everything back to grape growing as well, and geology, climate change. And we are seeing wines of such wonderful intensity from producers like that. Gene Stodden also from there as well. Some exceptional styles. Okay, so that's it for the major grape variety for a red for Germany. We've already done Riesling. We will cover all of the other necessary grape varieties in my next video. So we'll look at the likes of Müller-Thurgau. We'll look at the likes of Weißburgunder, Grauburgunder, Kerner, Dornfelder, Trollinger, Lemberger, and many others in that next part. A really interesting one. If you want to watch that video and learn about all of the other auxiliary grape varieties of Germany, you will need to go down to winewithjimmy.com and subscribe to the channel, where you'll get access to videos like that, plus a huge volume of other taught videos by me and extra resources. Great. Well, that's it for me today. If you do make your way down to the UK, to London, come and say hello and come for a glass of wine. And we, or maybe you'll have probably a glass or a bottle, who knows? But I'll see you soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.